So here's the issue. OSPI only started tracking isolation and restraint numbers 3 years ago, and it was during that first 2016-2017 school year that SPS recorded 4,890 incidents of isolation, where a student was put in a room like this, or that they were restrained somehow in the classroom. Now, to put that into perspective, Seattle, which is the biggest district in the entire state, had fewer than 500 incidents, while Spokane had nearly 4,900, basically amounting to numbers that are 10 times higher than the biggest district in the state. So now OSPI has released new data for the 2017-2018 school year, and if you take a look, it shows a pretty significant increase from 4,890 to 5,928. But to be clear, other big districts also increased their numbers. So Seattle, for example, increased by about 300 to 799. Now we take a look at Tacoma, which is actually a very good comparison because both Tacoma and Spokane have about 30,000 students. But if you take a look at Tacoma's numbers, they actually went down by 133, ending up at just 428. So when I first started asking SPS why the numbers were so high, they told me it was likely the case of over-reporting. And OSPI agreed, saying that Spokane was one of several districts that they believe simply was not using the correct technical definition of isolation or restraint. So that means certain incidents should never have been included in that high number. But now with new data in hand, I asked Spokane Public Schools why the numbers got even higher. What is the district's #1 focus to make sure and bring those numbers back in line?
Well, we've made a shift in our training model, and we've gone to a new training that's just started this month, so that is looking at being much more proactive. So looking at reducing instances before they even start, and then once something happens, de-escalation techniques that are available to us that are just not some of our extreme tools. So we're constantly looking at ways to expand our toolbox and looking for the applicability of all those different tools and make sure that they're used in the right set of circumstances.
Do you guys still think there are instances of over-reporting?
There are, and we're working on training, and part of the training that we're working on is to make sure that people are reporting accurately and according to the standard, but also trying to dig in now to the individual instances to understand what's behind those and to really be able to make corrections based upon those individual actions that are happening, the set of circumstances and facts that are happening.
You mentioned that the data is several years old, so we're looking at 2017-2018 data. So recognizing that that data is almost 2 years old, what has the district implemented since then that may not actually be reflected in those numbers yet?
So we're doing a lot of things. We're doing climate survey data, we're doing some other surveying, making sure that we know from both sides of the equation what people are perceiving and what is being reported, and then how those two pieces fit together.
I also reached out to the State Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction to find out what it is doing to help the Spokane district. I'm told OSPI is intervening with SPS officials to pinpoint problems and offer additional training.
Our team here at OSPI has been working with Spokane Public Schools to analyze their data and develop a plan for improvement.
Part of that plan includes personal training sessions with OSPI specialists coming over from Olympia. I'm told that will take place in May and will be for every SPS special education teacher and administrator. Now, an estimated 16% of SPS students are considered to be in special education, which is higher than the state average and the national average. Now, the district also says since 2016, though, it has implemented an increased number of restorative practice interventions, which are basically focused alternatives to isolation or restraint to try and alter behavior. So I did talk with some of the parents of those students who have voiced concerns about all of this in the past. They recognize there's no bad guy in this scenario, but they say the numbers speak for themselves, and they especially point to schools like Holmes, Ridgeview, and Whitman, which have a combined 1,600 isolations alone. There were a couple of schools that really seemed to stand out that had much higher numbers than others. What does that tell you guys as a district?
That there are individual groups and individual students that present different challenges that we need to look at and make sure that our training is adequate, that our approaches are adequate, and we really need to look at some of those with the higher numbers and understand what's behind those.
What is your message to parents who may look at these numbers and feel like their concerns about isolation and restraint still are not being adequately addressed?
These are very much individual situations, and know that we're working on them. We're not perfect, but our goal is to be there. We're having this conversation. We know it's going to continue. We know that there's more work to do, and we're doing that work.
Now, parents also tell me they are highly concerned now moving forward about how the new budget cuts could impact staffing, especially for special education students, the ones who need it the most. Now, this is something that OSPI will continue tracking. They tell me they do fully expect to start seeing lower numbers from Spokane, but they also recognize that any major improvement is going to take time. That said, SPS tells me they are fully committed to improvement. In the studio tonight, Whitney Ward, KREM 2 News.